Hey guys, it's Melissa Moore. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of Faith, Hope, Love, where we grow together in our faith, increase in hope, and learn how to better love God and love other people. On today's episode, we are in our What's Your Type Enneagram series, and we are joined by guest author Juanita Rasmus, and she is the author of 40 Days on Being a One. And so she's going to share a little bit about her experience as a one and what it's looked like for her to grow in her strengths and being able to better exemplify faith, hope, and love. So Juanita, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well as answering the obvious question, what's your type?
Good to be here with you, Melissa, you and your audience. And my name is Juanita Campbell Rasmus. I'm a native Houstonian. I live with this incredible man whose name is Rudy Rasmus. And we have two beautiful daughters and a wonderful son-in-law and a couple of grandchildren. And we have a life that we never would have imagined, but that we're so grateful for. And I am a one.
I am so thankful just for the chance just to meet you. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, but with me being in California and you being in Texas, I'm just so appreciative of the chance just to chat today. But I would love to hear, we're in this Enneagram, What's Your Type Enneagram series. And so we've kind of talked a little bit in previous episodes about how some of us have mistyped when we first started studying the Enneagram. So I would love to hear a little bit about how long you've been a student of the Enneagram, as well as, have you always typed as a one? Did you maybe mistype and now you know for sure that you're a one? What has your process been with the Enneagram?
Well, thanks for asking. Well, let me tell you, the way I came into the Enneagram was not necessarily the way I want anybody to come into the Enneagram, but it was a part of my journey. A number of years ago, I experienced a major depressive episode, and I talk about that in my book called Learning to Be. My experience with coming into an awareness, an invitation really, into the Enneagram, because when you experience the bottom falling out of your life, whether it be because of a mental health diagnosis like mine, or maybe it's a divorce or a dream that gets shattered, or whatever the situation, a health diagnosis, whatever it is, there is this place where you ask yourself, who am I? It could be that your children are grown and gone, and now you're saying, I've been this woman who's this, or I've been this father who's that. And now you're finding yourself having to re-establish an identity that's not based on doing or how you're showing up to parent or to show up on a job or showing up in a relationship. And so for me, when I was moving through my space of learning to live with a mental health diagnosis, the Enneagram showed up. And it was perfect timing. Because for me, what the Enneagram did was showed me that as a one, this perfectionist that I've been, this performance addict, this person who is often, up until now, needed other people's acceptance and approval, needed their pats on the back, trophies, awards, certificates to say to me that you're valuable, you're worthy. I had processed anger and my feelings. I always thought that because I grew up in the South as an African-American woman, that I could only be mad, glad, happy, and sad. And if you were mad or angry, you better push that down and be a good girl, right? Because ones are typically the people who would call themselves good girls and good boys, because we're always interested in following the rules and that kind of thing. And so what the Enneagram helped me to see is that some rules are meant to be broken. And that sometimes the rules that I have been operating in have limited my capacity to be my most authentic self. And so it's been very liberating to engage the Enneagram.
I resonate with so much of what you just shared. My husband, who I love dearly, is a one. And so again, so much of what you just said, I'm like, it sounds like what my husband would say. But then as myself being a three, ones and threes are fairly similar in that drive for perfection and the struggle to be authentic and wanting to succeed and be the best. And that can serve us as well as not serve us. And, really hinder us from being and showing up as the best woman that we've been created by God to be. So I love it. I want to kind of hear, as a one, what has it looked like for you to live like with your strengths and weaknesses. How have you handled stress and situations with growth? How has that come out both before COVID as well as now kind of in this COVID season that's, seems somewhat unending? What, your strengths and weaknesses, stress and growth, what does that look like for you as a one?
I'm a introvert. I've always acted as though I was an extrovert because as a role in my role as a pastor, as a spiritual director, I'm often on the front line, or as my daughters say, you're often on the stage, mom, on the platform, right? And so COVID has served me well in that I am an introvert, and I appreciate having lots of alone time so that I can then be present to people when I am called upon to be present. I think one of the weaknesses of being a one on the Enneagram is that we don't often notice what we're noticing. We don't often notice what we're noticing, especially about our feelings. In 40 Days on Being a One, I wrote a piece called It's Not About the Cheese. My husband and I have been married almost 36 years now, and I would do it all over again. I mean, even the worst times I would do over again because he's the person that I am supposed to be in this partnership with, right? And yet in 36 years of marriage, we have never been quarantined together before. And my husband is very much an extrovert. So when we started the quarantine, I knew that he's used to getting up in the morning and running out into the world, right? And for me, he's an 8. So for me, that was like, he runs out into the world. He burns off all that energy that is just so overwhelming to me sometimes. And then he would come back with a little less energy, and then we could live our life, right? Well, he was at home every day, all day with all that 8 energy. And what I found myself doing was recognizing that he wasn't used to being at home, where I've been used to working from home. I started trying to compensate to make sure he would be okay, and so I check on him. Do you need any water? Would you like a beverage? Or, making sure, did you want to eat breakfast? I can fix his breakfast. Or do you want a smoothie? Or, whatever. And so all these ways of trying to help make sure that he was going to be okay, I wasn't taking care of myself. And so one day, he was in his study, I was in mine, and I got up to go get a snack. And so I pulled out some cheese, and I cut off 3 little pieces of cheese. And of course, they're kind of equal pieces, because ones want to do it right. So of course, there's going to be 3 even pieces, right? And so I take the 3 pieces, I put them on a little saucer, and I'm turning to put the cheese back in the refrigerator. And I turn around, and one of my pieces of cheese is gone. And the rat who ate it is standing before me. He's an 8, right? I went ballistic. Why did you take my cheese if you didn't want a snack? I would have fixed you a snack. Now, 36 years of being married to this man, I know this is just something he does. But that particular day, 3 months into quarantine, I lost it. Fortunately for us both, he had a conference call he had to go to, so he skedaddled out. And then I stopped, and I noticed what I was noticing. And I noticed that I had to ask myself, why was I so angry? Why did I blow my top over that? He always eats out of my plate. Before we got married, he ate out of my plate. And he always says the same thing. It tastes better out of your plate, right? Now, I asked myself, why was I so upset? And in noticing what I was noticing, I was able to see that in my mind, I had been bending over backwards to help make sure he was accommodated in this environment that he wasn't used to. But for me, much of COVID has felt like the silent retreats that I frequently enjoy going on. So nothing really has changed that dramatically for me. And I wanted to make sure he was content in some way. But I didn't know that in doing so, in trying to take care of him, I was really depleting myself in some ways. I wasn't maintaining my own level of well-being, because I was trying to accommodate him. And so for ones, it's important, and I'd say for all the numbers, but for ones especially, it's important for us to notice what we're noticing. How are we caring for ourselves? Notice when we're suppressing it, because our anger becomes resentment. We find ourselves trying to be good, getting angry about it, stuffing it, and it becomes the funk of resentment. So that's been one of the keys for me, is to notice what I'm noticing, because that is an area where I am still growing. You called it a weakness. I called it an awareness, an area of awareness, that I have to notice what I'm noticing about how I'm managing my anger. Is it becoming resentment? Forgiving myself.
I've seen that a lot, like with my husband. I mean, he's like the most just giving, selfless people out there. He just is just so good, like just such a good-hearted person. And again, as a one, like that is, they're some of the most just selfless people, and sometimes to a fault, even, where they're not able to realize I have needs too in this moment, and if my needs don't get met, man, it's going to come out. And I mean, it's the most beautiful thing when health is present. My husband actually calls it's opportunities for growth, right? It's not weaknesses, but it's opportunities to grow.
See, we're both seeing it. I see it as an awareness for growth. And it is. That's how ones are, though, because we're looking for the perfect answer to this is the perfection of growth, right?
How have you seen the stress of COVID come out? Other than, this instance with your husband with the cheese, have you seen any other instances where you've seen your one come out in a way that either you've managed it well or you've seen it just kind of get out of hand?
I think one of the things that we've had to do, or I've had to do as a one, is to pay attention to the scripture says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. One of the things I think as ones is sometimes we're not always on our boundary game, setting healthy boundaries. Sometimes we'll say yes too many times. I have to pay attention to how many times I can say yes to something. And so what I'm learned, and what's serving me well, is to say, when somebody asks me to do something, our first inclination is to want to go, yeah, I can do that. Of course, sure, right. I got some things in my email this morning about reading some manuscripts, and would I be willing to endorse. And so I had to pause. For once, it is healthy for us to hit the pause button. That whenever a request comes our way, that we take the information, and this is something I've had to learn. I take the information and say, can I get back to you? Because I want my yes to be yes and my no to be no. It's important, again, and I use that phrase, to notice what you're noticing. And in this case, around the boundaries you're setting for yourself, your ability to say yes, your ability to honor no as sacredly as you honor saying yes.
I think that's such an honest tool that I think almost all the types could really apply. And I think that's a gift that ones do give to the rest of us, is being able to acknowledge when they're in a healthy space, that there are boundaries that we do have to set to be able to do the things we do well. So obviously that's a great tool for people that are ones that are looking to kind of grow in health and balance and wholeness. Do you have any other tips or maybe tools that you would suggest to a one that's kind of looking to grow and develop, not to perfection, but to grow in health and balance and wholeness?
Well, first of all, the first thing I want to say is to redefine perfection. And I think we almost have to do this for ourselves in our own way. So the way I've see, our default is to perfection. Shift your default. So now my default is progress. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to get done. All right. It doesn't have to be in alphabetical order. If it's not alphabetical order, it's required. All right. It just has to get done. And so I am learning that progress is a better approach for me. And so I am seeking progress over perfection. And so that's one tool I would offer. So noticing what you're noticing if you find yourself in those hypercritical modes, back up. And one way that I help myself back up is I stop, drop, and breathe. And so I want to invite your audience. I invite you to sit up tall and straight in your seat, as tall as you're able. And if you can put your feet flat on the floor, turn your hands palm side up and rest them on your thighs. And then breathe. Breathe in deeply and fully in through your nose, noticing the cool air. Exhaling through your mouth, noticing the warm air, exhaling through your mouth, like you're blowing through a straw. Breathing in deeply and fully. Exhaling deeply and slowly. And by changing my breath, breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, I am resetting my autonomic nervous system. Because when we're in that highly critical, highly judgmental space, often our nervous system is on high alert. And so if I'll breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth, it brings me into the rest, reflect, create space. Rest, digest, create space versus the sympathetic, which is the fight, flight, or freeze space. So yeah, one powerful tool for me is stop, drop what I'm doing, and then breathe.
I love that. And I feel like ones so often are moving so quickly that they don't take the time to slow even just their thinking down, because there's always the next right thing that they're supposed to move on to. And I mean, they're very, very efficient and they get things done so well. But if ones are running at low capacity, they're exhausted, then they can't.
And that's the other part of noticing what you're noticing, so that you give yourself permission to back up on some things, or at least take more frequent breaks, walk the block, and come back and then move into that space again, because we are productive. You want a one because typically ones operate in high efficiency and high integrity. For me, I realized at a very early age, I mean, I didn't have the awareness I have now, but I saw that if you followed the rules, people seemed to like that. Parents liked it. Teachers liked it. So one of the things I've had to learn or unlearn is the need to please other people.
I mean, that's a perfect lead into our next question. But, obviously our show is Faith, Hope, Love. And so I would love to understand a little bit more of, how has understanding yourself as a one helped you to really grow in your faith, increase in your hope, and learn how to love God and love other people better? What does that look like for you?
That's one of those questions that's ever evolving. But, I think for me, and I talk about this in 40 Days of Being a One, I think one of the most transformative moments for me was realizing how judgmental I was, and that I made a very good Pharisee in training. When I began to see that when I looked at people, I created a story about them immediately, right? And then they either lived into that story or they didn't. And one of the things I had to learn to do was to let go of my need to create a story about somebody because they showed up in a way that was foreign to me, different. They were the stranger other, right? And so as I began to notice how I judged myself and to start operating with more grace towards myself, when I began to say affirmations to myself, like I'm happy, I'm healthy, I am terrific, all is well in my world. One of the other affirmations that I do daily, multiple times a day, is I say, I am open and willing to receive and to give love. One of the other lessons and tools that I use, it's called the compassion test. And basically, when I see a person and I have judged them, Maybe there's something about their appearance or something about their demeanor or something about the words they use or the tone of voice. And I put them in a box and I categorize them. I've learned to use the compassion exercise to say, just like me, that person is seeking a life that they love. Just like me, that person wants to be happy. Just like me, no doubt that person has known pain in their life. Just like me, this person got up this morning and is hoping for the best. Just like me. And I just keep going down that list until I give that person their humanity back. But I also have given me my humanity back because I named everything by saying, just like me. I think, Melissa, if we were to solve and resolve some of the global and local tensions that we're having around race, especially now, if we could begin to look at one another and say, just like me, this person knows what it is to struggle. This person, just like me, knows what it is to want to put food on the table for their children. Just like me, this person wants and desires a decent income and a livable wage, just like me. This person wants to know that no matter what skin tone they have, they're safe, just like me. So the just like me compassion exercise has been a transformative tool for me.
I think that's so beautiful. I think there's, again, knowing my husband really, really well, the feeling of being loved, seen and loved by God, the way you are, the way He's created you, is so powerful. And then to be able to give that gift to other people and being able to look at every other person and saying, God sees you and loves you. You are created in the image of God just like I am. That's a beautiful thing that when ones can bring that to the table, I mean, that has the potential to shift and change our whole world if we can not only see ourselves as God's beloved, but seeing every other person as God's beloved. That's getting chills here. That's powerful.
I think if we would just start that practice with every person that we would typically want to disengage from, we would want to reject every person that we would say, I don't like those people, whoever those people are. If you would, at a safe distance, and it could even be on TV, you see that type of person on TV, and you just turn the volume down on whatever's being said and turn up within you, just like me. This person is in the pursuit of happiness, just like me. This person is longing to be held and loved on. And I love the way someone first explained the Enneagram to me. They said it's like a pie, that each of us has an aspect of what will give us unity as human beings, representing in our own unique way what it is to know God and to be loved by God, and how it is that we're being called to serve others in ways that they too might come to know this love of God.
I don't even know if I have any words to respond to that. That was phenomenal. I appreciate again how ones really are able to bring that side of the image of God. And as we all I think take time to understand one another better, I think the Enneagram is a great tool for doing that. We're able to come together as the body of Christ and work as a team to show the fullness, the wholeness, the oneness of God as we all come together as the body. I want to kind of ask you about your book a little bit. I would love to hear, obviously it's 40 days and I think it helps ones to have a structure for which, to do growth, a daily process, a daily practice, if you will. How does your book really speak to the type 1? What can they expect to learn from reading and doing the practices in your book?
one of the things I always often say is that the 40 days on being a one, it's for ones and people who love ones and for anyone. Okay. Because the reality is many of the daily writings that I did, I think we can all experience them. We can all have some aspect of looking at it. If nothing else, it's certainly a way to give us fodder for thought, right? But what 40 days does is it gives us an opportunity to reflect. And I put myself on the page as a one, vulnerable and naked. And I've had the feedback from others who are ones on the Enneagram say to me, she understands me, she gets me. And so the beauty of what I tried to do is at the end of every day, simply offer an opportunity for us to notice what we're noticing. My story might not be yours. What I'm talking about and discussing might not be an area of concern. It might not be a red flag for you. It might not even be something you enjoy or appreciate, but it gives you an opportunity to hear another one and to ask yourself, okay, so how does this show up in my life? Because I'm not seeing this, but what am I seeing, right? And so what I think 40 Days on Being a One does is it invites us to open up the wonder in us. And so each day is written with that kind of something to think about and then a practice to consider. And I say consider because ones are typically the kind of people who would read a 40-day book like this and want to go check, I did day one, check, I did day two. I'm not asking you to do day two. I'm asking you to be day two. Be it. Be present to the message that's there and allow yourself to integrate that message into who you are learning to be.
I almost feel like ones really need that invitation too. I think that sometimes they're just like the whole try harder, just keep kind of pushing, forging forward. And they almost need this welcome to just sitting and processing. Allow yourself this moment, and I think it's beautiful that, again, that you've put together this, 40 days. I think, someone said that it takes about 21 days to build a habit and to create, long lasting change. It takes about 90, but your book really gets you, about halfway there. And so I think to really, if they do it again. Yeah. Read it again. But I love it. And, again, my dad is a one, my husband's a one. I have a lot of friends that are ones. What would you say, final tips maybe to the one, as well as someone that loves a one? What would you encourage them with as we kind of close out today?
That one of the things that ones need to do, this is day 38, lighten thyself up. Lighten up, people, and start having some fun. Do some spontaneous things. Give yourself permission to color outside the lines. Give yourself permission to, the many of the things that we do routinely. Give yourself permission to not do those things. If you feel like you always have to put your books back after you use every book, today decide I'm gonna leave a book out. Let me just sit with that. See how does that feel? And decide, do I want to always live with that rule or do I want to lighten myself up? I think ones also need to be, and I write about this in 40 days, need to be encouraged to pursue joy. Pursue the things that you really, really love. In the 4 quadrants of your life, the time and money freedom area, the health and well-being area, the vocation, how you're serving the world, and then your relationship area. How are you pursuing joy? And so I would say to ones and those who love them, especially those who love them, encourage them to do the things that give them joy in the 4 quadrants of their life, which of course joy is one of the fruit of the Spirit in. And so for ones, my invitation and last words to you, what gives you life? What would increase the joy factor in your life?
I think it's, the fact that you bring up joy, I mean, in growth, ones are attached to that 7. And that's been like the biggest thing in our marriage, is just making it intentional to do fun things together. Because maybe fun doesn't always come, my husband plays golf. He's a great golfer, but sometimes he doesn't have fun with it. So we as a family, we play mini golf, and there's no competition with mini golf, And I think to be able to do stuff that brings joy, and that's, I think every type needs to be reminded of that, but especially the ones, just to be able to let go and, embrace the love that God has for you right where he has put you, and being able to enjoy the joy of the Holy Spirit and just enjoy life. So I appreciate you again taking time just to join us on this show. Obviously your book is available now. Where can people purchase your book, and then where can we continue following you, maybe on social media?
40 Days on Being One is available wherever books are sold. And I especially invite you to look for the small book retailers in your community. And they don't have it, invite them to order it for you. But certainly everywhere books are sold, this is available. And people can reach out to me. I'm on social media as Juanita, Juanita Rasmus, Rasmus. And you can go to my website, JuanitaRasmus.com, and you can order your books there as well. It has been such a pleasure, Melissa.
Thank you, Juanita. I appreciate it. And to everyone watching, whether you're a 1 or maybe you love a 1, I will see you back here next week as we talk about type 2.